So first of all, I'd like to ask you, how did you get started in the business?
I went to UCLA as an art major, and basically planning to go into commercial art and illustration and that kind of thing. And in those days, they had the point system. I don't know if they still have it with, you need so many units in order to graduate.
Right.
Well, I needed 3 units to graduate. And the only course that I could take that didn't conflict and allowed me to get the units to graduate was this stupid animation class. So that stupid animation class changed the whole trajectory of my life. Wow. Because it was so fantastic to do animation. You take a blank piece of paper, you start to draw, and suddenly you're acting almost like God, because whatever you draw these things, and suddenly they're alive and they dance and move and talk. It was really wonderful. So I worked around Hollywood. I for many years got married, and then I went. We thought there was a batch there with a lot of unemployment, ups and downs and so forth. And I was finding it difficult to get a job because I'd go in and all of the real old timers were ahead of me, so they're going to take the more experienced guy before they take a young kid. But we managed, and at the end, then things picked up, and I started working again. And my wife said, as long as we managed without your salary, that we could live on what I'm earning, why don't we take a year and go to Europe? We were talking first about doing a trip around the United States, but we thought we can always do that when we're old and gray. So let's go over to Europe. We got a one-way ticket, and we thought we could, not a year, but we thought we could stay there for about 6 months. I mean, that was the day Europe on $5 a day. It was a different world. However, even at $5 a day, we went through a lot of money, and we ran out of. But I had visited all of the studios. Every place we'd go, I'd go in, and they started offering me a job, and I said, no, I'm on vacation. I'm doing tourism, and but at one point we ran out of money, and we said, okay, now normally I would send a telegram to my father and say, dear Dad, send me money. But I had been invited because we were also writing some articles about film for the UCLA California Film Quarterly. And we had an invitation to Russia, and when we came, I parked my car in Sweden, and when we came back from Russia, they treated us like kings. We were students, they really loved that. And I expected to be spending all of my money, but since I'd left the car there so long, they gave me the weekly rate instead of the daily rate. So I still had $10 in my pocket. But I said, what should we do now? And she said, well, and I picked up the mail, and there was an offer there, come to Denmark to one of the studios I'd been to, and they had a film they wanted me to do. So I said, what shall we do? And she said, we've got $10. We'll do the film. So we went to film, and that's how I got started in Europe. I mean, I did work in the United States. I'd never worked in Disney's, because at the time I was working on small independent studios, and if I was making $100 a week, Disney was paying $50, and when I made $150, Disney was paying $75. I just couldn't take that cut in salary, and I was a little bit sad about that, because I always felt that I would have loved to have had that Disney experience. However, if I'd taken that Disney experience, I never would have gone to Europe. I never would have had the trajectory of life that I've had, because I was offered a chance to go to Finland. I spent a year and I set up an animation. Now this is a kid out of school. I mean, normally here you'd go and get Spielberg. But they gave me a chance to go to Finland and set up an animation studio. I designed their equipment. I taught. I mean, I'd studied at UCLA with really top people, and I learned a lot about animation. I studied with a man called Bill Shaw, who said, "I'm not going to teach you animation. I'm teaching you filmmaking." So I really knew the entire trajectory of how one makes film. So I set up classes at the university. I trained the people. And they've got me down in the history book as the father of Finnish animation. I can't read it, but but they tell me that's what it says. And from Finland, you know, we thought, okay, now we have a little more money. Let's travel some more. And then I went to Cannes to the Publicity Film Festival, and I met this man from Santiago Moro from Spain. And he said, "Come and work for me in Spain." And I said, well, you know, coming from I won't say a left-wing family, but my grandfather, you know, was, well, he was a socialist. You know, he carried, you know, banners around. And he was always complaining about Franco and the fascists and so forth. And I said, I don't know if I can live in a fascist country. And he said, well, come to Spain. And so I went to Spain, and he said, I said, okay, look it. He wanted me to be there for a year. I said, well, I'll stay for 3 months. If I can, you know, like the life and can stand this fascist world, I'll stay for a year. And if you like my work at the end of 3 months, you can either say stay or don't stay. Well, naturally, I ended up staying 40 years in Spain, and but I worked in many other places. I went to England. I did the Yellow Submarine. I don't know if you checked any of my background, but if you leave me a card and everything, I'll send you a CV, and you'll have some more information as well. Okay. And after that, I freelanced in Spain, and then came, since I had won some prizes in some of the festivals for publicity film and so forth, I started to get known. I got known more in Europe than in the United States. If I'd stayed here, I would have been just like so many of my friends. I would just been working and making a good living, but that would be it. But in Europe, he's from Hollywood. I mean, you know, all of these things are so stupid, but they do count. Right. And so they called me, and after the Yellow Submarine, I became much more known in that world. And this project came up with Rankin and Bass to do the Jackson 5 series. And they had given it to another studio, and I can't remember who it was, but they did a couple of scripts, they did a little bit of work. All the characters, everything Jack Davis had done, and that's one of the things I'll send you, because I have got the original drawings of Jack Davis's drawings of the characters, the Jackson 5 and Diana Ross. Oh, really? So I'll get some photocopies of those, okay, and I'll send them to you. I mean, that's great. It'd be nice for you to have that. And so they called me, and they said, would I be willing to direct this series? And that's how, you know, part of the trajectory of how I got to do the Jackson 5.
So you said Bass, Rankin?
Rankin is, yeah. Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin. They
contacted you to work on the project?
They didn't contact me. Hallison Batchelor contacted me because I was known more in England. Okay. And the people that were working in the English studios knew me. Mm-hmm. But Rankin and Bass had done lots of, you know, they were one of the big groups of people who did TV series. Mm-hmm. So of course, I became very good friends with them, and was supposed to do some other things with them, which I didn't. I was supposed to do the Osmond Brothers afterwards, but so I went there and I saw what the problem was. It was a huge problem. They had a short deadline. They had 17 episodes, and I looked at it and I said, "This is a tough job. I want to I'll make this deal with you. I'll do the best I can, and if you think you can find somebody who can do it better than me, you bring them in, and I'll go on 5-minute notice to pack up my stuff and leave, because I think we had something like 10 months or 11 months to do 17 episodes. Today it's a little different. At that time, I hadn't had that much experience in terms of this mass production of quantity. I'd been always working on quality things, but I certainly wasn't going to do and not give the quality to this Jackson 5 thing. And when I came in there and saw what they had, this was also, I think the thing, I just said to them, look, this is the first black group that's going to be on television. It's going into all these homes, all of these kids, young kids. This is a really, really important project. Yeah. And look at these scripts here. They were dumb scripts, hitting people, stuff like that. It was just, I said, if we're going to do this, that we have to make this so that they solve the problems with intelligence and with music, and in other words, to give it a positive moral aspect. And that is the thing I'm most proud of, that I was able to influence that, change all the scripts, and I think they came out. Have you seen them all of the episodes?
Oh, I can't even begin to tell you how. I mean, I'm not going to sit here to say that a cartoon changed my life, but I was such a huge Jackson 5 fan, and such a huge Michael Jackson. And those cartoons, I mean, I remember them like they were yesterday.
Yes,
well, I am really pleased, because my attitude was, it's going in to homes, if I can just influence 50, 100, 200 kids that go on and do something great.
I don't think there was any black kid in America that did not, at that time, make that, appointment television, and it was a must-watch.
Oh, God, that just what that does for me, you can't imagine.
Oh, for myself, I remember, just like she said, it was yesterday, and always look forward to Saturday morning. The Jackson 5 sat there, knew all the music, so to see them on television, if you didn't get a chance to see them in person, that was the next best thing.
I never met the Jackson 5.
Really?
Never met. I was asked by somebody else, that I have any contact with Motown, or when strictly was ABC, the television channel, who were paying for it, buying for it, contracted it with Rankin and Bass, and of course the Rankin and Bass organization, and Hallison Bachelor, this company that was producing it.
So if you never got to meet the Jacksons or work with Motown, how was the storyline developed?
It was strictly a question of we had the group, we had all the music, I knew that, and I was working with a bunch of very good, there were good scriptwriters, and I was able to say, stop, don't do it this way, do it this way. And at that time, we're going back a long time. I can't really tell you, but there was no influence. Nobody said you can't do it this way. They obviously approved the scripts, but when I said I won't do this violent kind of thing, I wanted to change it and have them do it with humor, intelligence, and in music. They went ahead and they went along with me. So that was, and of course I had one other thing. They gave me carte blanche to do all the songs, and I since the Yellow Submarine, there was some really beautiful graphics in that, and what I did was I didn't use my team of people to do the songs. I got people all over Europe and said, here's a song, this is episode so-and-so. The only requirement is that it be good and that it have the theme. You have complete freedom to do whatever you want. It's a 3-minute song, a 4-minute song. Complete freedom, just as long as it has the same theme as the film. And you remember that, the songs, they jump around, and some of them are more abstract than others and so forth. So it was a really incredible experience for me. And when I mentioned, that I came and said, I don't know if I can do this. At that time, Chuck Jones, who was the inventor of Bugs Bunny, or one of the inventors of Bugs Bunny, Chuck Jones was vice president of ABC. And Eisner, who was the head of Disney, was the head of ABC at that time. And so I got a message to Chuck. I said, this is tough. I don't know whether with the crew of people I've got and with the facilities I've got, I don't know whether or not I can, make this and deliver this series. What happens if I don't deliver on time? And a week or so later, one of his assistants came, other not only that, but for other things about the Jackson 5 series. And we went out to dinner, and he said, by the way, I've got a message from Chuck. Chuck says, you do not deliver. Fortunately, I did deliver, and I'm really, really happy and proud of, the way the thing came out. I think it was one. But I've been extremely lucky because I worked on the Yellow Submarine. I worked with Saul Bass on Around the World in 80 Days. I don't know if you ever saw that with the title at the end there, and which has got a little story also on it. That one I was really right out of school, and I was doing it. And there's one scene there where some confetti come falling behind one of the credit things, and I'd arranged it so all the little red dots at one point would all come together and spell Balser. Why am I clever? And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and what happens if it's not just one frame, but with persistence of vision, it could be there, and it says Balser, and everybody, I'll never work in Hollywood again. So I got up in the morning, ran over, pulled off some of the red ones. But I've been very, very lucky to have worked with the Around the World in the 80s, to do the Yellow Submarine, to work on the Jackson 5. So I have no complaints.
Was the Jackson 5 as popular in Europe?
It was popular everywhere. It was popular in England, but it was basically made for an American market. But it did play all over Europe.
And who came up with the idea of calling Michael's friends, his mice, Ray and Charles? That came up in another, but somebody else asked me that, and I'm almost certain that's what he called. He had a whole lot of animals. He had snakes and mice and I don't know what else, but I think that he did call them Ray and Charles. I don't know how you would check that to find out for sure, but somebody must have that. But it's in the back of my head. That same question came up because they were in the scripts, and somehow because Rosie even, was that someone who was famous that we don't know about, or was that just a generic name for the snake, Rosie?
No, that to Rosie Greer or anything.
No. It wasn't. I don't know, but I think that those were the names that he actually, as a little kid, he used for his pets. And probably, I know he had more pets, but we limited to those 3.
So in the Jacksons cartoon, you were the supervising director. Was that of animation or the day-to-day?
No, that was the whole production. The whole film production.
Right.
I had 3 or 4 directors that I got to do certain episodes, because I had to do 3 or 4 episodes at a time to try to, complete the... We did 17 episodes in England at Hallison Bachelor, and when we were almost finished, that's when they asked me, could I, since I had been in Spain and had worked in Spain, could I put together a crew of people and do 6 more episodes. So the question was, they had the Osmond brothers. I was here in the States doing something, I can't remember what, but I did go to Las Vegas. They were playing in Las Vegas. I did meet the Osmond brothers, because I thought that was going to be my next project, but they said no. They really wanted me to do the Jackson, who were so popular that they wanted me to do those other episodes. So I went back to Spain, set up a unit, and worked in. And a lot of people talking about Studios Moro. I mentioned that I had when I went to Spain. I also set up there's a sort of a rivalry between Madrid and Barcelona. It's a little bit the San Francisco, LA kind of rivalry, and I don't know whether it's what you have back east there. But they couldn't send somebody from Madrid to run the Barcelona office. They wanted to set up a studio in Barcelona. And they didn't have anybody qualified to run the office in Barcelona, so the next best thing was a foreigner. So I went and set up the studio in Barcelona, and so when it was functioning as a Studios Moro when I left, and when I came back and set up these units, I rented the top floor, so we did make it at a Studios Moro, but it wasn't a Studios Moro production.
During the course of you working on the Jacksons project, I know you mentioned there was no contact with Motown. However, in the animated series, Barry Gordy appeared in Diana Ross?
Yeah, that's something I don't remember, but I know that he was, we made a caricature of him, and it more or less looks like him. And, he has a role to play. Now, whether it was a realistic role, I didn't get involved with, the scriptwriters in terms of how they interpreted him, but obviously, since it went with my concept of what the films had to be, nobody seemed to complain, and I don't think Barry Gordy complained, or Diana Ross,
So there was never any one-on-one interaction?
No, never any one. I mean, if I had did it today, I would make damn sure that there was an interaction with them, because it really, if you know the people, you can switch the story and you can actually do more with the real character, because this is all imaginary Jackson brothers. Mm-hmm. The imaginary Jackson brothers. Marlon lives in Los Angeles. He's a very good friend of one of my best friend's daughters. So, I haven't seen him, but I mean, he knows what's going on and so forth. But I don't really know what their character was. I mean, really as human beings. So this is a sort of a created group, but at least with a certain respect for what I was trying to do.
As we were putting information on the museum site, I read that it wasn't the Jacksons who were the voices, but because as a kid I believed it, I didn't believe it. So as an adult I was like, okay, I'm reading this, but I don't believe it. And we didn't put it up, and then I went back and I read, I was like, okay, really, they're saying that these weren't the Jacksons, but I never knew that. I mean, it was so authentic and so believable, and I worshiped that cartoon so much that years later to find out that other people did the Jacksons' voices, I was like, no, that can't be right.
But the same thing with the Beatles. The Beatles didn't do their voices. They were all actors that you can't work with these people. They have such a rigid schedule and responsibilities and so forth. You couldn't say to Michael Jackson, come in at 10:22 and work for 2 hours. I mean, you know, he might say, "I'll come in," and you just stand and wait until he got around to coming in, but you couldn't. So you have to have a real, you know, actors doing them. And they weren't bad. The voices were pretty good. The voices were pretty good. The soundtracks were good. And
but it was their original music, correct?
oh yeah, it was all there.
And then it was the voices. And
Yeah.
were Diana Ross and Berry Gordy their voices, or were those actors?
No, those were actors too.
Well, the Jacksons were the hottest boy bands coming out of Motown from the late 60s, early 70s.
Right.
Were you and your team disappointed when the cartoon only lasted 2 seasons? Or was it made just for those 2 seasons?
It was made just for those 2 seasons. I mean, when you're dealing with television, especially at that time, it was a dog-eat-dog world, and really tough to get things sold and get them, you know, get them on. And one of the things, the Jackson, I'm pretty sure, they were up for one of the top awards from the Parents Association of America. And the reason it didn't win that award, I was told, was because ABC had jammed the show with TV commercials, and they felt that was really, you know, a negative aspect.
That's interesting.
You know,
What do you think made the show so successful?
you know, if I could figure out what that is, I would be a millionaire. You just, you know, what you do is you do the best job you can do, and you do it honestly, and you hope for the best. I mean, I've never met anybody who says I'm going to do a lousy job, but you can't guarantee anything. I just happen to have been lucky to have been surrounded with people who, you know, shared the same kind of philosophy, vision, and so that was it.
Do you think it made a difference having that philosophy and being around the people that you work with in Europe versus if, let's say, you had?
You know, I don't know because I never worked. I've never worked in an American studio situation. I've always worked in Europe, in England, in France, and in Spain. I've worked with a lot of Americans. I mean, had a lot of people. I knew all the people. I'd bring them over and so forth. I don't think it's the artists. If you've had any kind of relationships with artists, they are pretty straight shooters. It comes from the money aspect of it, from the business, and and since we were doing in Europe, and I just never felt any kind of money, any kind of economic pressure. I don't know, maybe here it would have been another thing. You've got to do it faster, you've got to, cut out the work. I don't know.
What do you want the legacy of the cartoon to be? What do you want people to remember?
Well, I would like them to remember just what I said, that there was a group of kids, and they were really terrific, and especially Michael, and that the stories had a moral to them, and that when you solve the problem, when something is wrong, you do it, and when it's solved, you've made a contribution. And I really hope that I have made a contribution with that series in terms of young kids seeing it, and also you talk about the race problem. You go back to that time. That was not an easy time. There was a lot of I have a friend of mine who was one of the first black animators who came to, he didn't work with me on the Jackson 5, but he worked with me in Spain. And he's from California. His mother said, you're not going to be a no-good bum. You're going to, and he went to school, he learned, and he became an artist. He came there. And we had a terrific, working relationship, but he lived with me for a couple, 2-3 weeks. And naturally, we talked about stuff. And he had been in California, which was relatively liberal. and he made a trip down to visit some relatives down in Carolina, or and with his separate toilets and when he was there, and he couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe the problems. I mean, the things that had happened to him. I mean, you just don't. Those things, I never experienced it, so how could I, how could I know it? But
well, I tell you, we're grateful that the cartoon was developed the way that it was, and there wasn't any violence, and there was problem solving. Because, just as you said, during that period of time, I think children, regardless if they were black, white, purple, or green,
Right.
they needed to see that.
Right.
Because if you look at the cartoons from the 70s and you compare them to the cartoons that are made today, it's horrible.
Yeah.
I have godsons that I watch cartoons with, and the stuff that they are watching is just unbelievable.
Well, I did a series in Spain called The Triplets. It's 3 little girls, and it was shown. I had some talking to some people in Hollywood that too soft. No violence. Gotta have and I did do the series, and it's one of the biggest success in the world, at least in Europe, called the three sisters.
Would you like to see the Jacksons cartoon on television again? Do you think that
I would love to see him. As a matter of fact, it's been such a long time. I've got a few, I've got a lot of stuff from the Jacksons, and not just the cells, but I've got some little clips of film and so forth and so on. And but I noticed unfortunately, when Michael Jackson died, I checked on eBay and memorial stuff and so forth, and then I saw that they're selling DVDs and stuff with all of the. So I'm going to get one. I want to have it, and I've got it. A VHS that somebody gave me with 2 or 3 episodes on it that they had recorded off the air in its day. But I would love to really look at it again. And also, good color. It was. I mean, when I look at these things, I just love them. I've got some really, really beautiful cells, with all of them, great big ones like that. But
so, is your collection more than just the Jackson 5 collection?
Yeah, I've got. Since I had my studio, I have some stuff from the Yellow Submarine. Remember, in those days, cells were nothing. I only took some cells. I wanted sort of a memory of what I had done.
Yeah, we've been told that cells, because we collect animation, so I've got a lot of Chuck Jones stuff, and we collect a lot of the black animation as well.
Yeah.
But we were told that cells were like washed and reused. Is that
They were. They for a long time. The cost in Spain, for instance, they would make a film, take the cells, and the girls would take and wash them all off so that they could reuse them. And with the Jackson 5, you're going to get sick when I tell you this. Doing it in Spain, I had to justify the money that they sent in for me to pay the people who were working. And they would pay, for film, they would pay 1 cent. You could collect 1 cent per foot of film. Well, animation is short, so that was nothing. But the cells sort of went as lithographic cells or something. You could classify them as $1, $1.50, something like that. So I would pack up all of the cells when we finished the film in a box, ship them to England, say, here is 5, whatever the number of cells I had to send in order to be able to justify the money that had come in, ship it on off. They would sign for it in England and take the box and throw it in a dumpster. So the only cells that really exist are the ones that I have, because I had the archive of whenever we do something that was really good, we'd say, okay, we'll call that, archive scene 22, Michael talking to the left, Michael to the right, Jackie dancing, you know, all these various things, and a few cells from that were left over from that were not shipped over to the dumpster. So you know, it's, and a lot of I sold it at one point. I would never even have kept these cells had it not been for June Foray, who is the voice of
Witch Hazel.
Witch Hazel, and she's a very dear friend of mine. And she called. We were talking, and she said, "Bob, save some of the cells because we can sell them at the SIFA, the Animation Society. We can sell them at the meetings, and we can raise some money to pay for things." So I said, okay, we'll save. I'll go through the boxes and save what we could save. And at one point, somebody said they wanted to buy some, so I said, okay. And I sold them to a dealer here in the United States. I sold, I think, 25 cells. And I don't know if I signed them all, but I sold. And those were really beautiful cells. And I'm sure that if you bought some old ones, that's where they came from.
Well, since Michael's death, do you think there has been more interest in collecting animation?
You know, I don't really know. My daughter-in-law, you know, she's the one. I'm so connected to these drawings that it makes it. I can't look at that. I can't sell that. I can't sell that. She said, you know, this is the, you know, you've got a lot of cells. These things, you should put them out so people can have them. And she really helped me tremendously to break that emotional, attachment to these cells. Now I can look at them and think, this is a beautiful cell. Somebody's going to enjoy it. And she's done, you know, she hasn't priced them, you know, she's been very fair. I saw somebody put a cell on, they wanted $8,000 for it or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous, you know. But I don't know whether, you know, we're coming to the end of the cell production. Everything is computer graphics. Even though Disney is working in 2D animation, they still do a tremendous amount of coloring. I mean, in computer, because, for instance, I could animate a scene. There's 100 drawings of animation with a character doing something. I don't even have to register them. I put them in the computer and into a scanner, and the scanner puts them in the computer, and the computer knows exactly where the edge of the paper is and everything, and it goes, and it's now in the computer in a line drawing. You call up a paint system, push a button, and you just click, 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 click. Just click them, color the face, boom. All 100 drawings are colored. You know, you have to go through and check them, but I mean, so it's a whole other world. I mean, when you look at these cells, these are painted on the back. These cells, they're not stuck on down. You know, look at how beautifully that's painted on the back there. But this drawing on the front is not. This is drawn with a Chinagraph pencil.
So you're saying it's actually drawn on the acetate?
It's actually drawn on the acetated and painted.
Interesting. As opposed to there being separate.
Opposed to being put through a Xerox machine and so forth. So this is one of the last series where everything was hand traced.
Hand drawn, hand inked.
You know, well, we know that this is, you know, a lost art form, and that's why we're such big animated collectors and fans of animation. And we know so few people who have an appreciation for animation, and so few galleries that will house animation. You know,
but yeah, you asked me about, was this all the things I had? From my studio, I've got Jackson 5, some Yellow Submarine, a lot of Charlie Brown and Snoopy.
Oh, really?
Because I did lots of episodes of Charlie Brown and Snoopy. That's a gray area because ostensibly it's mine, but you know, when if you're dealing with a syndicate where they've got lawyers and they've got millions, they could say, "I'm coming to your house and taking everything you've got." So, but then I have Fang Face. I did Fang Face TV series. I did Kid Power, which was a fun series to do. Count of Monte Cristo. I'll send you. You're going to give me your card, your address, and so forth, and I'll send you some stuff.
Okay, great.
You know, some photocopies of some of the things, and I especially think you'll like seeing the original Jack Davis drawings.
Now, the one last question I have to ask you: with all of the work that you've done, what is your most favorite?
Boy, that is so difficult a question. Because I have always enjoyed everything, and not everything, but the good things that I've done, the things that I mentioned, like Around the World in 80 Days, the Yellow Submarine, the Jackson 5, the Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and I had a wonderful crew of people. I had in Spain at my studio, Peg Bar Productions, I had about 80 people. To 100 people, you know, working when we had big jobs. I did another thing called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which won an Emmy in 1980. And the people that worked there said that was the best studio they'd ever worked in, that they loved coming to work in the morning. What more do you want when you're going to work with people? You want everybody to be happy. Everybody wants to make money, but money just cannot drive your life.
Right.
And when I used to have people come in, they treated me marvelously when I started out in business. People would receive me, look at my drawings, give me advice and so forth. So I felt I had to reciprocate. And I'd have 2, 3, 4 people a week coming through the studio. And I always looked at their stuff, always gave them advice. Once in a while somebody would come in who was really good and I would hire him. But I had one guy come in and he said, "How much money can you make in this business?" And that was the end of it, as far as I'm concerned, because certainly you want to be well paid for what you do, but you're certainly, that cannot be your driving motive. You've got to enjoy what you're doing. You know, so when you ask me, what would, you know, it's been a whole, I've been very lucky to have a tremendously positive run of work. I'm retired now. I do give some seminars and give some lectures in the universities and so forth and so on. But then, you know, I'm done.
Of the cells that you have for the Jackson 5, I mean, what is your intent with them? Are you looking to...
Well, you know, the thing about it is, you can't, my wife is screaming at me, you know, I've got boxes all over the place, and, you know, I keep, and, but one thing that Patty has done is she's given me, because I didn't realize, you know, that this one Jackson, Michael Jackson here, he doesn't have any pants. Yeah. So I would say, well, I couldn't, you know, sell that. It's not complete. And she said, nobody cares about that. They want Michael Jackson. They want so I suppose, I mean, she's, you know, I want to help them out with my son and daughter-in-law. So I said, you know, you take them all, sell them. You know, if you make enough money, give me something. You know, it's not, but to help them to, you know, and may even turn around that becomes their business, and they, you know, I don't think they can make a living on it because there's just not that market. If you look on eBay, it sells it, you know, there's just not that much stuff there, and very few bids, unless maybe at the end, you know. I mean, she's done very well. She's sold quite a few.
Yeah, we bought a couple of them.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time out.
Oh, this is my pleasure.